how did like your disability and that experience particularly, how did that impact the career choices that you went on to make?
So I laugh because my career path is quite funny. I went to a trade fair and I was walking around this trade fair and there was a stand selling, and everyone laughs with this, vibrating rubber ducks that were a sex toy, but because of this show, they could get away with it. And they're a brand called I Rub My Ducky. They're still in existence. They're an American company and they're a vibrating rubber duck. I usually have one on the shelf. I do have one on the shelf behind me, actually.
Oh my God.
This is the Pride version.
Unreal.
And so obviously it's a very discreet vibrator. And when I was talking to the people on the stand and they were saying, oh, we have other stuff, but we can't show it on the main stand, which I'd like to come and have a look. And there was a load of vibrators and some other sex toys on the stand. I thought, that's brilliant. I wouldn't mind doing that.
Yeah.
And that was where my story into like the sex toy industry started. So I started a store then. And so I started doing that. And it became very apparent over the first 4 to 5 years trading was a lot of the sex toys weren't accessible for people with dexterity issues. And I was always looking for something that could help people with disabilities. So I then started concentrating on looking for products that were what I deemed accessible. And I spent a lot of time researching products, looking at them, getting them in, seeing how a lot of people just think it's to do with the buttons, but for me it isn't. It can be like the packaging, the instructions, the textures, the colors. There's a lot, you've got to look at so many, even the smells. There's a lot of people who don't like the smell of certain materials.
Yeah.
So I spent my time looking at things like that. And then the pandemic hit, and which was brilliant for business because everyone was staying at home. But
Everyone was bored and needed a vibrator.
Exactly. And I was thinking, I'm getting a bit bored though. So I started some work with a UK charity called Enhance the UK, who do about sex and disability. And then I decided to qualify as a sex educator as well. And I think working with bigger companies, I can have a bigger impact. So I now work with sex toy companies looking at how to make their products accessible and how we can talk to more people in the disabled community. Because for me, sex and disability is a massive taboo.
Yeah.
You know, I speak to so many people from the ages of 20 right up to 70 who have had no sex education. And that could be because sex education is crap in schools, in mainstream schools anyway. But it's even in a lot of SEN schools, it's just non-existent, or they have to do some now, but until say 18 months ago, they could get away with teaching nothing. And I get so frustrated when I speak to someone, for example, in their 50s, who is still very naive on a lot of sexual health topics. So I'm quite happy to talk to people, give them advice, tell them about products. So it can be anything from, you know, what condoms are accessible, or even talking to people about going into a sexual health clinic, because these are not always accessible. You see videos on Instagram, people trying to go for a smear test, for example, and they can't even get into the doctors. So we need to have these open conversations. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing now.